Billionaire breaks off his wedding and ends up falling for the woman who crashed it. The evening sun dipped low over Byron Bay, painting the skies in streaks of orange, gold, and soft pink. The gentle hush of the ocean blended with the distant music of a string quartet, and somewhere behind the towering glass walls of the Azure Cove estate, Australia's wedding of the year was about to begin. Ashton Hartley, tech mogul, billionaire, and tabloid favorite, stood alone at the edge of the clifftop garden, looking out at the endless blue horizon. He should have been inside, adjusting his cufflinks, posing for last-minute photographs, and preparing for the moment every glossy magazine would capture. But instead, his heart was in open rebellion. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't cold feet. It was emptiness. The woman waiting at the altar was beautiful, accomplished, and every bit the perfect society bride. Evangeline Rivers was the heiress of a powerful shipping empire, her name as polished as the diamonds she wore. On paper, they were Australia's next golden couple. But Ashton knew the truth. He didn't love her. He never had. Castillo? His breath caught in his throat, the cool salt air filling his lungs, and somewhere between the crash of waves and the hum of his thoughts, Ashton made a decision that would unravel everything. He turned away from the altar and ran. As Ashton's polished dress shoes hit the winding coastal path, the sound of the wedding behind him faded, replaced by the soothing hush of the Byron Bay waves. He loosened his tie, tossed it aside, and kept walking, each step pulling him further from a life built on appearances. The guests would be murmuring, his mother would be scandalized, his best man would probably be tearing his hair out. But none of it mattered now. He just needed to breathe. The sun dipped lower, casting a golden shimmer across the water, when suddenly a figure appeared on the sand ahead. A woman. Barefoot, wild, windswept hair falling in loose waves down her back. She wore a vintage-style sundress, patterned with tiny white blooms, the fabric catching in the evening breeze. In her hand, she held a single worn photograph. She was looking at it with such intensity, she didn't notice Ashton approaching. Until she did. Their eyes met his storm blue, hers a shade of gray that looked like thunderclouds over the sea. For a moment, neither spoke. The world hushed. The air between them felt electric. Then she gave him a crooked, almost apologetic smile. "You look like you're running from something," she said softly. Ashton let out a dry laugh. "You have no idea." She tucked the photograph into her pocket and stepped closer. "Well, you might be exactly the person I was hoping to find." Ashton blinked, caught off guard by her words. "Do I know you?" She smiled. "Not yet, but I was about to crash a wedding. Guess I'm a little late for that." His heart stuttered. "Seriously?" "Dead serious." She extended a hand. "I'm Calla." "Ashton," he replied, shaking her hand and feeling something he hadn't in years. A spark, a jolt, a strange, dangerous sense of possibility. "I came to stop my half-sister from marrying a man she didn't deserve," Calla admitted, her voice tinged with sadness. Turns out, he figured that out on his own. "Let me guess, Evangeline Rivers?" She gave a bitter laugh. "The very same." And just like that, their fates tangled two people, running from different versions of the same prison. "Come on," Ashton said, nodding toward the path. "I know a place." They walked in silence at first, following the narrow path that curved down the cliffside, hidden by thick eucalyptus trees and tall grass. The distant sounds of the wedding faded completely, replaced by the rhythmic crash of waves and the soft calls of kookaburras from the treetops. Ashton led Calla to a spot few people knew existed, a small, secluded beach tucked between two towering headlands, accessible only by foot. "This place is stunning," Calla breathed as the cove opened up before them. Smooth white sand, dark rocky cliffs, and the endless expanse of Byron Bay's indigo sea. Ashton kicked off his shoes. "Used to come here as a kid, before the world got loud." Calla followed, her bare feet sinking into the cool sand. "Why did you stop?" because somewhere along the way, life stopped being about what I wanted. He looked out at the water, eyes shadowed. It became about legacy, headlines, boardrooms, and billion-dollar mergers. Calla was quiet for a moment, then she smiled softly. Sounds exhausting. It is. She tilted her head. Want to trade lives? I've got a vintage caravan parked by the markets. No Wi-Fi, no plans. Just a stack of books and an old surfboard I barely know how to use. Hat. For the first time all day, Ashton laughed, a deep, unguarded sound that made Calla's chest ache in a way she didn't expect. You might be the most dangerous person I've ever met, he teased. And you might be the loneliest, she replied gently. He didn't deny it. As the sun dipped behind the cliffs, turning the sky a soft lavender, Calla pulled the worn photograph from her pocket. Ashton caught a glimpse. A little girl with sun-bleached hair, standing on this very beach, holding hands with a smiling woman. That your mom? He asked. Calla nodded. She died when I was 10. Evangeline's father married my mom when we were both little. It was complicated. She didn't treat you well. That's one way to put it, Calla sighed, tucking the photo away. She was always the favorite. I was the mistake they tolerated. Something about her honesty, raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic, hit Ashton harder than any business deal, any scandal, any wedding plan. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Don't be, Calla shrugged, giving him a half smile. I survived. Turns out, I'm good at escaping things that don't deserve me. Ashton stared at her, something shifting in his chest. Maybe he was about to start doing the same. As twilight fell, the two of them built a small fire from driftwood at the edge of the beach. The crackle of flames mingled with the night air, thick with the scent of salt and eucalyptus. Calla stretched out a blanket she kept stashed in her old canvas bag and dropped down beside Ashton. He followed, rolling up his sleeves, his crisp designer shirt now smeared with a streak of sand and soot, and somehow it made him look human for the first time in years. They shared a bottle of cheap red wine Calla had brought along, taking turns drinking from the same tin cup. It felt reckless, strange, and more natural than anything Ashton had done in a decade. So what happens now? Calla asked, poking at the fire with a stick. Ashton shrugged. I guess I go back tomorrow and deal with the fallout. Damage control, statement to the press, lawyers, PR managers, billionaire problems. And after that? He looked at her, really looked at her. The flickering firelight made her skin glow, made her eyes look like twin storms. I don't know, he admitted. For the first time in my life, I don't have a plan. Calla grinned. Good. Plans are overrated. They both laughed, the sound raw and easy, and for a moment, it felt like the world outside this tiny cove didn't exist. A cool wind swept in from the sea, carrying the scent of rain. Thunder rumbled low in the distance. Ain't you got it? Looks like Byron's about to put on a show, Calla said, tilting her face toward the sky. Ashton stood, offering his hand. Come on, there's an old fisherman's shack just up the hill. We'll be dry there. They grabbed the blanket and wine, sprinting up sandy path as fat drops of rain began to fall. By the time they reached the shack, both were soaked through, breathless with laughter. The place was little more than 4 walls, a rusted tin roof, and a warped wooden floor, but it felt like a palace. Ashton collapsed onto the floor, still laughing. Calla followed, leaning back against the wall, their shoulders brushing. And in that small, storm-battered space, the weight of the world melted away. I haven't felt like this in years, Ashton admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Like what? Calla asked. Free. The rain battered the roof, a steady rhythm that matched the pulse in Ashton's throat. He turned to Calla, their faces inches apart, eyes locked. Mid-act. There was no music, no cameras, no audience, just this. The space between them charged, electric. Ashton lifted his hand, brushing a strand of damp hair from her cheek. Cala's breath hitched, her lips parting slightly. And just as he leaned in, a burst of lightning lit up the room, followed by a crack of thunder so loud it made them both jump. They burst out laughing, the moment breaking like a wave. Guess Byron Bay's got a sense of humor, Cala teased, her cheeks flushed. Ashton grinned. Or maybe it's just saving me from making a mistake. But neither of them really believed that. The storm slowed by midnight, leaving the air thick and heavy with petrichor. Inside the old shack, Cala and Ashton lay side by side on the old blanket, both staring up at the rusted ceiling. Neither spoke for a long time, and yet the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet you share with someone who feels like they've always belonged beside you, even if you met them hours ago. Finally, Ashton spoke. "You know what I miss?" "What?" Cala whispered. "Sundays. The kind where you sleep in, make pancakes, argue over terrible movies, and fall asleep in someone's arms with no idea what time it is. I haven't had a day like that since my dad died." Cala's heart twisted. "You were close with him." "He was the one who taught me how to escape." Ashton smiled faintly. "We used to come out here, to this exact beach. It was our place. Then everything got big, the company, the name, and I let them tell me who I was supposed to be." Cala reached over, her fingers lacing through his. "Maybe it's time you remember who you really are," she murmured. Ashton turned his head toward her, eyes darker in the soft glow of lightning outside. "And maybe it's time I figure out who you are too." By morning, the storm had passed. A soft, golden dawn broke over the horizon, casting everything in new light. Ashton knew the world was waiting. His phone had buzzed itself dead. Headlines were probably screaming. His mother was likely halfway through a scandal-induced fainting spell. Nelson died. And yet none of it seemed to matter as much as the woman asleep beside him. Cala stirred, blinking against the sunlight. She smiled, and it felt like the first real sunrise Ashton had seen in years, but reality wasn't far behind. A black SUV pulled up at the top of the path, and a suited man stepped out. "Mr. Hartley," the man called, "your mother demands your presence. The board's in chaos." Ashton sighed, dragging a hand through his hair. Cala sat up. "I guess this is where the fairy tale ends, huh?" "No," Ashton said firmly, looking down at her. "It's where it changes." "Date." He knelt beside her. "I don't know what happens next, but I want you in it." Ashton stood, brushing the sand from his clothes as the suited man waited by the SUV. The weight of his old world, pressing against the fragile new one he'd just tasted. Then Cala stood too, hugging her blanket around her shoulders. "You should go," she said quietly, trying to mask the ache in her voice. "Fix your empire. Make the headlines go away." But Ashton's jaw clenched. He took a step closer. "I don't care about the empire." "Then what do you care about, Ashton?" He reached out, brushing his knuckles down her cheek. "You, this, the way I feel when I'm not him, the billionaire, the headline, the name on the stock ticker." Cala blinked, her throat tight. "Don't say things you don't mean. I've never meant anything more." Behind them, the man in the suit cleared his throat. "Mr. Hartley, we need to leave now." Ashton turned, his expression hardening. "Tell my mother I'll see her when I'm ready." "Sir, with all due respect, do it." The man hesitated, then nodded and left. When Ashton faced Cala again, he grinned. "Guess I just blew up my life for the second time in 24 hours. Cala's lips twitched into a smile. "Hope you're good at rebuilding." He stepped in, his hand finding hers. "Only if you'll help me." Later that afternoon, they sat together on the steps of Cala's old caravan at the Byron Bay markets. The salty breeze played with her hair, while street musicians strummed lazy chords nearby. Ashton had never felt more himself. No tie, no title, no expectations. Just a girl, a van, and an endless sky. "What now?" Cala asked softly. Ashton reached into his pocket, pulling out a tiny silver compass, one his dad had given him as a boy. He placed it in her hand. "Now, we go wherever this points," she laughed, eyes misting. "North it is, then." As they leaned into each other, the world didn't vanish, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like maybe, just maybe, it could be beautiful again. If you felt every heartbeat of the story, don't forget to hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Timeline Stories for more tales where hearts collide and destinies rewrite themselves.